So bodybuilding now is a whole lot easier than when I was competing.
Legendary bodybuilder Ronnie Coleman is often called the king of modern bodybuilding. Establishing unbelievable dominance, the champion bodybuilder won the Mr. Olympia title for 8 years consecutively. So what does he think of modern bodybuilding? Let's find out. Ronnie Coleman on modern bodybuilding. Ronnie Coleman was an exceptional bodybuilder even for his own time. He became a legend because he trained harder than everyone else, often at the cost of his own personal health. So what does he think of the modern era of bodybuilding? Not only in comparison to himself, but to his peers in the 90s and 2000s. There has been a lot of debate over the past year about how the modern era of bodybuilding stacks up to past generations. This is often focusing on the quality of physiques. But when we talked to Ronnie Coleman about the modern era of bodybuilders, he had a bit of a different criticism. During the filming of Ronnie Coleman the King, interviewers asked Ronnie what his opinion was on bodybuilders and bodybuilding in general after his retirement. Ronnie Coleman focused less on the physiques of modern bodybuilding, but instead on other aspects, specifically what resources are available today versus his time in the sport. Regardless of whether the physiques are better or not, Ronnie Coleman believes that bodybuilders have it overall easier. They have more opportunities to earn money, they have more equipment to train with, and they have more supplements and knowledge of how to handle their diet. Does that mean bodybuilders have to work harder in earlier eras? Perhaps, but it also speaks to how much the industry as a whole has grown. More opportunities, more knowledge, and more resources are good things. Yes, Ronnie Coleman makes a quick comment about how new training equipment might make lifting easier than it used to be, but he doesn't seem to claim this as a damning statement about young bodybuilders today. Instead, it's just an acknowledgement of how much the sport has changed. Not for the better, not for worse, instead just something different. It's the kind of change that happens throughout generations in general, not just in sports but in life. Nearly everyone has some grandparent or parent that says, "You guys have it easy," but that's the goal, isn't it? To provide something better for future generations.
So bodybuilding now is a whole lot easier than when I was competing. We didn't have all those shows that we can compete in to get qualified and make money from. I agree that they don't work out like I did. Real hard and real heavy. And the guys now don't do what I did.
Old school versus modern bodybuilding. Technically, bodybuilding has existed as a lifestyle endeavor since the 19th century. So when speaking of old school bodybuilding, it can be referencing various eras in the history of both the sport and the culture as a whole. Typically, when people discuss old school bodybuilding, they are referencing 60s and 70s bodybuilding. New school or modern bodybuilding focuses on the current era. This, of course, is frequently changing, but can today be labeled as anything post-2000. But what are the actual differences in bodybuilding over the years? Understanding fitness science and overall technology with each passing year have significantly changed fitness as a whole. So, of course, this has changed how professional bodybuilding works as well. Can we trace the entire evolution of the sport and the tactics behind building muscle? Ranging from the early 1900s through the golden era of Arnold Schwarzenegger and into the modern era seemingly defined by social media and increased drug use. In the old school days, bodybuilders eventually settled on the standard of training a muscle group twice per week. It was also more common for workouts to consist of heavy volume and lower reps. In modern bodybuilding, it has become standard to train each muscle group once per week. To make up for the lack of a second day, a typical workout session now consists of enough exercises for what was once 2 days of work. Modern bodybuilding has also largely moved towards lower volume and higher rep amounts, often training to failure. Of course, this is not solely done by all bodybuilders, but overall, lower volume and higher reps seem to be the more popular standard in new school bodybuilding. Another big difference between old school and new school bodybuilding is the equipment. In older eras of the sport, it was much more common to focus on free weight exercises. This, of course, has led some to believe that machine exercises are inferior to the old school method. While there are pros and cons to both, the real reason old school bodybuilders did fewer machines is that there were far fewer machines in existence. The technology behind exercise machines has increased rapidly. It's only natural for more equipment to be used today in comparison to before. Do modern bodybuilders compete with the classics? When Ronnie Coleman walked on the stage, not just the jury members but also his fellow competitors gasped in awe. Having dominated the Mr. Olympia stage for 8 straight years, Ronnie crafted a legacy like no other. He comes from a generation of bodybuilders whose individual feat remains inspiring. Be it his famous rivalry with Jay Cutler or his comparison with Arnold Schwarzenegger, he is a man of high repute. Having come from a generation of great bodybuilders, Ronnie, in an archived interview, spoke about present-day bodybuilders. When inquired about Brandon Curry, Ronnie said, "Conditioning is not the same." During the interview, Ronnie said at great length about modern bodybuilders. Except for Phil Heath, Ronnie expressed his dissatisfaction with the young talents. He agreed with what Brandon Curry had earlier said. Ronnie commented on Curry that he couldn't even stand in the top 6 if he had competed in the 90s. After seeing the pictures of top bodybuilders like Dexter Jackson, William Bonac, Rolly Winklar, and others, Ronnie added that almost all of them won't be able to feature in the top 6. Ronnie commented on their diet. Nobody looks like they've been on a diet. Adding further, the legendary bodybuilder said, "Nobody looks in shape." Drawing a parallel to the bygone days, he says that the modern-day bodybuilder holds no chance in front of him and guys like Flex, Kevin, and Sean. Hinting at the stark difference between the past and the present generation, he added, "They wouldn't beat any of the guys I faced." Ronnie Coleman agrees with Dorian Yates on modern bodybuilding. With this statement, Ronnie became the second next to 6 times consecutive times Mr. Olympia champions Dorian Yates commented on present-day bodybuilders. Much like Ronnie Dorian, too was unimpressed with the current quality of physiques at the pro bodybuilding competitions. Ronnie, like Dorian, remained critical of the younger generation in the archived interview, but Phil Heath seemed to have found a special adoration from Ronnie. Impressed by the young talent, Ronnie could not help but comment that Phil would have been a genuine threat even if he had competed in the 90s. Drug use in modern bodybuilding versus Ronnie Coleman's time. Another major difference between bodybuilding today and the old-school era is drug use. It's been commonly assumed that bodybuilders today take more drugs than those in the golden era and earlier. While there are no deep studies done comparing the two, anecdotally, many athletes and experts find that the doses are higher and the drugs more powerful. Not only that, but brand new drugs have entered the arena of modern bodybuilding. Insulin was a drug unused in bodybuilding until the 90s. Milos Sarcev famously claims to have introduced it to the sport. There was also the introduction of SARMs and their legally gray status into bodybuilding as well. In addition to this, technology makes this information easier to get, black markets easier to engage with, and drug distribution that much more plentiful. But this can be disagreed with. After all, even Ronnie Coleman used steroids during his time as a king of bodybuilding. Coleman is popularly known for his big muscular body. He is one of the greatest bodybuilders the world has ever witnessed. Ronnie once went for a podcast with the famous UFC commentator Joe Rogan, and in that podcast, Coleman disclosed that steroids are one of the many factors that helped him in his bodybuilding career. Coleman had put in a large amount of hard work for his body. Even now, when his back injuries take a toll on him, he never misses out on his training sessions. Coleman discussed the prescribed steroids he took during his bodybuilding career. Coleman also believes that genetics has a big part to play in how big your body can get. Steroids are just one of the many factors for Coleman's legendary body. In addition comes long hours of gym training every day with tons of weights and consistency. On the use of steroids, Coleman said, "It is not like you are taking everything." Furthermore, he claimed that his body is fit except for the back injuries. That includes his heart, liver, and kidney are in really good condition. It is nearly impossible to make a body that matches that of the legend Ronnie Coleman. Furthermore, it is even difficult to maintain the muscles for such a long span. Even after suffering from back injuries and 13 spinal surgeries, he still continues to train his body, which is impressive and commendable.
I mean, basic, you got, your tests. It's just basic stuff, And back then, because the DA had come in, they made us do it legally. So, you had to go to the doctor and get all these prescriptions. Once the DEA came in, they was like, "What are y'all doing? What are y'all taking?" See, I didn't know what that was when I was a kid.
That's all for today's video. See you next time.